So welcome everybody to today's presentation. Just a couple of housekeeping items as we begin. If you could just keep yourselves on mute as the presentation is going on, and then feel free to unmute yourself or use the text chat. I'll watch for it and relay any questions that are there. So I wanted to welcome to our presentation today, which is Beyond Words, the Grammar of Nonverbal Communication, presented by Carmen Theobald, who is a director of Horse Sense North. 1 second here, I'm just going to pull up this, sorry. So Carmen is the founder and director of Horse Sense North, where they empower people and businesses to be who they're meant to become with her horse sense. And so I just want to say thank you and welcome to Carmen.
Thank you so much, Lori. Yeah, so maybe I'll just give a little bit of background for me as well. So we do different kinds of work here. Sometimes it's personal growth and development. Sometimes it's leadership and team building and this and that. And sometimes it's trauma recovery work when I'm collaborating with therapists and different organizations to support that. But no matter what background we're coming from, I just feel like we can all in the world use a little more horse sense. So horses are truly my best teachers. They school me hard in some ways, and I do my best to really take that learning. And I'm so grateful that we get to partner with incredible beings here like the horses on our farm. We have a beautiful herd of 5 horses that really do incredible things with the people who come here. But we don't always have to have the horses directly with us to get some of that horse sense like we are here today. So there's some pieces that I'll be sharing with you through this webinar that I really believe could be beneficial when we're talking about communication and relationships, no matter what species we're talking about, and especially with humans and business. Because I think sometimes that can get skipped over a little bit, where we are about productivity and getting things done and, meeting targets or whatever it might be for your businesses specifically. But I don't know any single business that doesn't involve relationships, doesn't involve relationship building. Because even if we're a person working alone in a basement, we still have to have some kind of communication relationship to get our work out into the world. So these are some things that we're going to go through today, some pieces of like horse sense, or that are helping us learn a little bit more of that grammar that is beyond words. And I also want to acknowledge that I'm sitting here in this beautiful farm between Brooks Falls and Magnenawan that's part of the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe Nation, part of Robinson Huron Treaty 61. And it's really important to us here to take that learning deeply into our heart and carry that into the work that we do. So I'm going to start sharing my presentation here in a moment, but we're a nice small group. If anyone wants to share, maybe in the chat, since we're a little bit bigger, maybe just a little bit about you, who you are, like tell me what kind of business you have. I would so love to see that in the chat so I kind of know who I'm chatting with and sharing with over here. I also really appreciate that you are having your screens on. It's so nice to see faces. It makes a big difference. So thank you for that. And I'll open up my chat here and as I see some answers coming through. So I have this image here that shows this horse with all this stuff going on around this beautiful being. And I think this is really connected to us, even as humans, even in business, because there's so much going on around us all the time that is beyond words, beyond what we can see, beyond our body language even. And so we're going to get into some of that here today. And for us to know that the words that we're using only make up about 10% of what we're communicating. So even if you take away, vocal tone, maybe say another 20%, 30%. So now we're like, that's still a huge bulk of what we're communicating that has nothing to do with the words that are coming out of our mouth whatsoever. And I see here that Tracy, she's a graphic designer, also a horse lover, and has a farm, 2 horses, right? Very cool. And I see another person, Barbara, communications company, specializing in environmental and conservation sector. Very cool. Horse lover too, excellent. Working at another person, Kylie working at Paro, communication, social media, amazing. Yeah, so I so love seeing this. Oh, great. I'm so happy you guys are writing in. Administrative manager for a therapy office, creating connection couples, family therapy. Amazing. Yeah, you know, I love how horses tend to connect with people in so many different backgrounds. And what I love of the work that I'm doing is that it doesn't even seem to matter if people have like Olympic level riding ability or no horse experience whatsoever. I really see this work connecting. So I hope that that can be true for us here today as well. So knowing that words make up such a tiny, tiny percentage of what we're actually saying, now we can lean into what we call sentient communication. This is a term coined by one of my mentors and teachers, Linda Kohanov. And this is really the grammar of nonverbal communication. So we're doing these things that we're going to go through in this presentation all the time. I am positive we've all done pieces of this, but how aware are we of it? That's a different story. How much can we intentionally pull that into our toolkit of how to support us during, whether they be just moments of enjoyment in a relationship to even make it more of a healthy communication, but especially how do we bring those elements of this nonverbal communication grammar intentionally into our situations when we're struggling, when we're having conflict, when we're trying to find solutions in a situation that feels really difficult. So we can actually utilize all of this in a way that can support making things better and making hard things a little bit easier. And I see Celine here says that you're retired 8 years ago, complete your certification as a coach. Fantastic. Oh, that's such important work, Celine. Thank you for sharing that. All right, just trying to find my mouse here. My mouse has disappeared. Okay. There it is. Didn't want to show up. Okay, so we're going to be talking about what's really beneath, before, and beyond words. Now, there's a lot of elements to sentient communication, and this is only a handful of them. There's many more. I'm sure that as research continues to develop, we'll even learn more about it. But we're not going to talk about all these today, but we're going to talk about a handful that really can intentionally, we can, like, skills that we can strengthen, almost like thinking about it like a muscle that we can strengthen, and some take-home tools that we can utilize in our personal and professional lives. So this first concept that I want to share with you is this concept of interpersonal mindfulness. And all the things that we're going to talk about and actually practice on this call are connected to this concept of interpersonal mindfulness. So just as an example, I want you to put a yes for a Y for yes in the chat and an N for no in the chat, and S for sometimes. So Y, S, or no. Yes, sometimes no. How many of us are really good at paying attention to the other being, whether that's a person or horse? Let's call it person for now since it's a business call. How many of us are really good at paying attention to the other person, what's going on in their experience while we're having an interaction? Yes, no, sometimes. Some yeses, sometimes, yes. Yeah. How many of us are excellent sometimes? How many of us are really good at paying attention to ourselves, paying attention to what we're experiencing, what we're going through as we're in an interaction with another being? Yes, no, sometimes. Sometimes, sometimes. Yes, yes, no. I love the honesty. Excellent. Okay, so that's totally fair. How many of us are really good at paying attention to the other and ourselves simultaneously at the same time? Yes, no, no, no. Sometimes, yeah, no. Okay, I love the honesty. That's fantastic. And same, I'll say sometimes. It is a skill that I'm working on all the time. And I also feel like this is a skill that is deeply important for any situation in life. And in business, to give an example, if we're having, let's say, a conversation with someone at work, the ability for us to both pay attention to them and ourselves, to really Notice what's going on and their energy and their emotions and their words, what they're communicating beyond words, and what we're experiencing too. Noticing if we're getting activated, noticing if we're bristling at something, noticing if we're like, wow, that was really amazing. I want to remember that, right? All of these things to notice what's going on with both beings and the space around us and between us. That's all really, really helpful information. What we're communicating is based on what information are we able to receive in that moment and how are we able to integrate that information. So not just about data and numbers and budgets, but about what's happening for us in this relationship. And this is like a muscle. It's totally understandable that a lot of the answers for how are we paying attention to both at the same time, a lot of it's no or sometimes. It's hard. This is hard to do. And yet it opens so many doors when we get stronger and better at this. So as we move through this presentation, I want us to think about all of these different skills and tools, like building muscles, physical muscles. Even if it seems like, oh, that's really hard to do, or that even this concept that's really hard to do, any good coach at a gym isn't going to say, okay, we're going to start today by lifting 200-pound weights. That would be dangerous and irresponsible. So the same is true for us here. I want us to think about building these kinds of skills as slowly building muscle, baby step after baby step at a time. We build a little bit when we're in a protected environment, right? We go to the gym, we strengthen things with care, with technique, with support, and then we can be in our life and suddenly lift up that box and it's not that big a deal. So it's a similar kind of thing. We can practice all these skills and tools, build some of that emotional strength muscle, and over time, as we get stronger, now we can utilize it in our interactions at work, at home, wherever we need, especially when things are stressful. But if we're only trying to pull these tools out of our toolkit when things are already stressful, it's like going to the gym and saying, well, I'm just going to be strong right away. We actually have to practice these things. And you might notice some of these tools, you're like, I do this all the time, right? But now we're going to give you some language and validity to something that maybe you were doing unconsciously. So you can bring it into your conscious self and use it with intention. All right. So for this presentation, we're going to talk a lot about our physical selves, our bodies, because our bodies are these tuners, receivers, and amplifiers of nonverbal information. It's incredible how much our body is present even when our mind is not. So we're picking up on things in the environment, we're picking up on things within ourselves, and that kind of interplay. So the more that we can have this physical awareness of ourselves, the more information we're going to have to inform how to take the next step, how to move forward in that communication, how to create healthy relationships. And so this body awareness is so key, I think, in anything we're doing. Part of my big training for this is in the other role, the other hat that I wear, and that's as a farrier. So I'm also a farrier. I've worked with thousands of horses in Ontario over the last 13, 14 years. Some of them are super cute, like this one little guy named Flash. But a lot of the horses I work with are much bigger. So of course, my body awareness is important with him, but it's extra important when I'm working on big, powerful beings like this. And it's not just important because I need to, know how to use my tools and this and that, but it's really important for safety because so often horses are very intense. And this kind of big, kind of aggressive view of these two horses fighting, I can't even count how many times I've had that same kind of physical response be directed at me. So how do I navigate these moments of high intensity, high conflict with horses while still giving them the respect and dignity that they deserve and making sure that I'm safe? So there's a lot that I integrate both in my farrier work and in the work we do with Horse Sense North that overlaps with, of course, our human relationships. Because horses, just like us, they're coming with baggage. They're coming with trauma. They're coming with all kinds of things in their background that are difficult. So as I meet a new horse, whether it's in the work with people and kind of working with horses to help support them to get through their healing cycles or training, or whether I'm working with horses as a farrier, or whether I'm working with people, it's so important that we are super aware of all the potential stuff that's coming before us. Who knows what we're kind of walking into as far as like landmines, right? So to be aware of all of the stuff that's going on between us, within us, and with the other really helps us create psychologically safe and emotionally safe environments. Because now we can utilize that information, especially the information we're picking up from our body, and make healthy, conscious choices with it. And I hear you if that sounds like a lot. No, again, going back to this muscle strengthening piece. We develop this skill little bit by little bit over time. For instance, this horse, Grace, she has been through really dark times. If anyone had told me 5-6 years ago that she would be like my rock and my partner in the work that we do here together, I would have really doubted their sanity, because she was super intensely aggressive with people that she felt unsafe with. And she's gone through so many of her own healing cycles to get to a better place where she's actually really amazing at teaching and helping people heal and helping people step into their own power. So although we're talking about business, I don't think we can separate who we are from who we are at work as much as we think we can. So I'm not suggesting that anyone steps in to be like a therapist or counselor for our employees or our colleagues or our partners, but to just have that awareness that we are beings with challenges that we're bringing to the table, and we can do our best to compartmentalize, but there's going to be parts of that humanness that seep through. So these are tools that we can utilize not only to help ourselves, but help others that we're working with, even if they have no idea we're using these tools. And Kylie says, sounds exactly like my mare, feral horse when she arrived, and now she's the biggest teddy bear. That's wonderful to hear. Yeah, so a lot of that is possible both with the people and the horses when we have a sense of safety, when we have a sense of that emotional, psychological, spiritual, everything, mental safety, all of it, all the parts of ourselves. So we're going to talk about some tools that can really support us to expand our ability to do that, both for ourselves, because we can only support others to the extent we can do it with ourselves, and of course for others too. So even as we're in, a business meeting, we can be integrating some of these tools that we're talking about and have a surprising effect on both ourselves and the group or the individual that we're with. So if you don't have a pen and paper with you already, please grab one, because I'm going to ask us to do this little activity and you're going to write a few things down. Let's give you a pause. Okay, so we're going to do this body scan. That is going to help us just get this baseline awareness of where we're at in the moment. I'll kind of walk you through it a little bit and then invite you to write things down so you don't have to jump to it right away. But I wanted to invite you to do this first activity together to really help us connect to our body, these tuners, receivers, and amplifiers of nonverbal information. Such incredible, almost like tuning forks to our environment. And I'll ask you to just be in a position you're in. You don't have to, if you're in discomfort that really needs to be shifted out of, that's fine. I don't want you to be suffering. But at the same time, if you're experiencing pain or discomfort, I don't want you to try to wriggle out of that. This is not like a meditative releasing activity. This is simply a noticing activity. So if you want, with your eyes open or closed, take this pause to start to scan down your body, really from head to toe, and noticing any and all sensations that might be present. None of them are bad. They're all just part of the moment. They're all welcome. And even notice things like breathing and body posture. And when you're ready in your own time, write down as many of those sensations as you can name, the positive, negative, neutral, or even non-existent. Maybe you had parts of your body that are numb. That's okay too. Just to notice that and write those down on the paper that's with you. Okay. So when you've written down as many as you can, just type a yes in the comments, or a Y, or whatever is the short form for you. Okay, great. Seeing a lot of yeses coming in. So there's nothing wrong, even if you noticed a lot of tension or pain or this or that in your body scan. It's not wrong. It's just important that you noticed it as a baseline. We can think of this as like a baseline awareness of where you're at physically. And then we're going to write down a few more things as we go through this presentation. So with that piece, if you're still ready, you can take your time to finish that up. No, I'll just keep kind of going here. I want to bring in the breath. Now, if you're like me, if you're in a time where you're feeling stressed or angry and someone says, well, just breathe, I get so frustrated. It's not something I enjoy hearing. And yet I also know it's super true. So I want to talk about the breath in this moment when we're not in a heated moment together, I hope, to allow it to be something that we can integrate with a lot of intention. And that way we can bring it into our stressful moments if and when we need to, or even just when we're feeling well, and to kind of amplify a situation. So although I had some resistance to people telling me, well, just breathe, and I'm like, I'm going to kill you, I really do appreciate how important the breath is. And the horses continue to show that to me in really big and powerful ways. For instance, I worked on this one horse. His name is Freddie. And if I stopped breathing, Freddie would immediately start to misbehave. He would start to move around. He'd start to pull his foot away. It was very hard for me to get my job done, especially in a safe manner. But when I remembered to keep my breathing steady throughout the entire process, Freddie was really calm. And there's so many examples like that I can share, even to the point of extreme examples where I had one person think that I had drugged her horse just because I integrated these breathing techniques with a lot more muscle strength at the time. And it had calmed the horse so much that the person thought I had slipped at some drugs, which was not true. So when we are integrating this breath for ourselves, I want us to remember that we're also doing it for those around us. And especially as business owners or people working with others and leaders, we have so much impact on other people just by our simple position or relationship, status, if you will. But then we can add such incredible, helpful pieces just by remembering to do things like checking in with our body and doing some of these kinds of breathing. So the first kind of breathing I want to share with us is a breathing that's called 1-2 breathing, or 2-1, depends who you're talking to. And this is a breathing that really helps us to calm our nervous system. Our nervous system has so much influence over our ability to think. Our body has so much influence over our ability to think clearly, to problem solve, really have our brain online, so to speak. So our executive functions of the brain, our ability to really get clear and be very aware, that's only accessible to us if our body feels safe enough, if our body feels calm enough. So this is a kind of breathing that will help us access those higher levels of thinking and functioning in our brain. So this kind of breathing, our in breath is going to be half the length of our out breath. And we can also think about putting some pressure behind the out breath, like we're breathing out through a straw, or my personal favorite, if we think of that dandelion, really kind of blowing on the seeds of a dandelion. So if you like to think about yourself in nature, kind of, you can imagine that a little bit. So I'm going to walk us through a few of these breaths. I'm going to do like 4 in and 8 out as a count, but you do whatever count and timing is right for you. I don't want you to be deprived of oxygen, but we do want to slow down our breathing compared to what our normal breathing rate is. So with your eyes open or closed, I'm going to invite you to try this with me. And we'll breathe in for a count of 4. So breathing in through our nose. 1, 3, 4, and out for 8. 2, 3, 4. And as you're breathing out, putting some pressure behind the out breath. And on the next in breath, in, 2, 3, 4, letting our breath out with some pressure. 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8. And as you breathe in, let your shoulders be soft and low. Let your bellies really fill with that oxygen. And as you breathe out, breathing out through your mouth, putting pressure behind it, really exaggerating that a little bit for yourself in this moment. Elongating that out breath. And on your next breath in, you're going to let your shoulders stay soft. You're going to really expand your diaphragm, really letting your bellies really open up. And on your out breath, you'll let it just slowly push out, letting tension leave your body as you put that pressure behind your out breath. Let's do one more together. And whether you continue that breathing right now or not, I want you to go back to that pen and paper and write down any new sensations that you might be noticing compared to your baseline that you did moments ago. And once you've written some things down, I'm not rushing you, take the time you need. Just put a yes or a no, like a Y or an N in the comments. Yes, if you did notice a enjoyable change in your body, or no, if not so much. Okay, great. So mostly yeses, some no. That's okay. One of the things I really want to draw our attention to back to again is that these are skills that sometimes can be really challenging at first, especially if we have struggles in the way that we've been breathing for a long time. If breathing is kind of activating, if someone's been telling you just breathe, right, that can really kind of throw this whole thing off. Or also just if we're not used to it. Sometimes I've had people have a hard time even feeling like they can catch their breath if they have some like anxiety connected to this. Many of us are living in a very heightened state of anxiety as our norm. So when we start to really intentionally draw in deeper breaths, it doesn't always feel helpful or relaxing at first. And that's okay. Remembering this is like strengthening our muscles little bit by little bit over time. And there's going to be tools that are more or less helpful for you. But I'm really glad to hear that a lot of people had that be kind of a bit soothing. So not only is it kind of nice in our body, but it really is changing the way that we're able to think. It's changing the way that we're able to perceive and take in information. So our breath is so deeply intertwined and connected to all of our physiology, all of our ways that we function. And what's also cool, I'm going to move on to the next kind of piece of our nonverbal grammar here, is that our bodies also have an amazing ability to send our brain information, not just help our brain get more online, but allow actually some information to come from body to brain and not just brain to body. So that's a lot of the work that we end up doing here, is to help people get more of that communication link happening, to be more embodied, not just to have sensation in their physical selves, but to actually get information from our body. And one of the ways that we do this is by really allowing ourselves to be open to how amazing our hearts are, that our heart is an organ of perception and communication. It does a lot more than pump blood. It actually sends twice as many messages to our brain than our brain sends to our heart. And one of the ways that we're starting to learn about this, and it's such a cool time because science is finally kind of catching up to what some of us have known for a long time, and also helping take it out of the just woo-woo realm and make it measurable and really part of effective skill building and tools for communication. One of the ways that we're learning more about this is with the heart's electromagnetic field. So put a yes in the comments if you've seen this before and know if this is new to you, or an N or yes or Y. My Y's and yeses and no's are all getting mixed up here. Okay, cool. Some yes, some no. Awesome. Yeah. So I'm so happy because when I first started working with this, all the answers were no. So it's really exciting to me that there's some yeses and no's mixed in together now. So this electromagnetic field, this is an image that comes from the HeartMath Institute. And the HeartMath Institute and the University of Arizona did some really cool research that I was actually part of. And that's how I have the ability to share some of this with you today. So we have these electromagnetic fields, these energy bubbles, if you will, that emanate in and out of our heart space all the time. And this is not just like someone's imagination. They're like, I think it looks like this. This is based on imaging that they took by putting willing participants in a 10 by 10 lead room. And they measured them with these squid magnetometers that are really finely detecting machines. And that allowed them to see that we all have these electromagnetic fields, multiple layers of them that emanate in and out of our heart all the time. And we know that from working with horses, because we actually have physiological responses to these layers. There's more than that 10 by 10. There's more than just those 3 layers. It's as if you touch the water and there's these concentric circles that keep emanating outward. And I think the same is true for the horses and for us. The earth has electromagnetic fields. All these different aspects of our beautiful universe have electromagnetic fields. So this is part of what helps us understand that we're actually all connected. We actually have this interconnectedness. We are affecting one another. That has nothing to do with body language, that has nothing to do with the words that are coming out of our mouth. We can have the perfect mask and make it seem like everything is okay. But if we are emotionally dysregulated, if we're feeling stress and anxiety or anger, whatever it might be, other beings are picking that up, whether it's conscious or subconscious, they are picking it up, and we're able to know and measure that more and more all the time. So we can utilize this knowledge in a few different ways. We're going to talk about a couple here. So one is around space and proximity and how that can actually serve as a communication tool. So when we are interacting with another being, especially people who are maybe hypervigilant or who are maybe neurodiverse or who are just having a really intense moment, often it's helpful to have more space than we would necessarily think. Giving more physical distance can help the brain come back online. And we see that in the work with animals, in the work with people, where there's this moment where we can actually back up to a spot. So sometimes I'm interacting with a client and we're having a chat and things seem fine, but maybe we've touched on a topic that is a little bit activating. It's a little bit difficult. So I've intentionally left my tea a little further away and I'm still engaged in the conversation, but I'm going to gently walk over and get my tea and just pause there for a moment and listen and engage until at a certain space, at a certain distance away, it's almost like instantly they're kind of back. It's like they've gone offline and now they're back. Does anyone know that? Put a yes in the comments if you've seen that in people before, where you've been interacting and you just kind of, you notice they go offline a little bit, or maybe for yourself, right? Say yes if you can recognize that in yourself a little bit. Okay. Yeah, so mostly yeses. So, and for those of you who maybe this doesn't sound familiar, it's okay if we're not picking it up all the time, right? But it is happening where people will just kind of dissociate a little bit, disconnect a little bit. And one of the many ways we can support that is by playing with space. That's not always the right thing. Sometimes people need us to be close, but very often playing with a little bit extra room has a really beautiful opportunity. A personal example, my husband and I are much less likely to say things to each other that we don't mean if we give yourselves a little bit more space if we're having a disagreement. And that's really important because we work together too. So when we're able to, have a challenging discussion, a difficult conversation, and not be right in front of each other, but we're able to have a little bit more breathing room, it's a really helpful tool so that when it is resolved, when we are able to be on the same page, now we can come back together, whether it's a partner like my husband, or even just a colleague, or not just, but a different kind of relationship, more of a strictly professional relationship, where we can be in that closer proximity and it actually is a healthier state where our brains are able to still be online. So it's not an A plus B equals C situation. It's not a formula of when someone gets stressed, you do this. These are tools to take out of your toolkit and try. These are things to explore and see how it impacts you, how it impacts the other, and really practice some of that interpersonal mindfulness to see if it can really be helpful to the relationship, including our professional relationships. And so we talk about the space that our bodies need for our mind to be present. And I've worked with people from many different cultural backgrounds, and it doesn't really seem to matter. Yes, there are cultural significances around like what's considered appropriate, what's considered, respectful, and yet the body is the body. So even in those situations where the culture might be very different from our own, it's amazing how the system changes, our body system changes when we play with these proximities, space and proximity. Here's another way that these electromagnetic fields can be a really helpful tool for us, is to recognize that this is also how emotions can be communicated and are affecting our electromagnetic fields. So when we're in a state of stress, anxiety, fear, anger, whatever it might be, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but there's this kind of jaggedy line, the pinky line here. That jaggedy frequency matches the frequency of our electromagnetic field. So if we think about, we have these energy bubbles all the time. And when we're in a state of dysregulation, when our emotions are not quite right, and right in quotes, of course, that frequency is going to be kind of jaggedy. But when we're in a state of calm, of peace, of joy, of awe, or just curiosity, but with that open-heartedness, now we can get to this more fluid wave-like frequency, and that goes through our electromagnetic field as well. So when we're around other beings, it's so important that we know that emotions are contagious, not just because we say so, but because we can actually measure it in lots of different ways now. And one of the ways is through these electromagnetic fields. So as my frequency is kind of jaggedy, that's contagious to others. And that's a big part of what we're communicating, even if all the body language pieces aren't necessarily indicating that. And horses are, of course, really adept at picking up on all this too. But the good news is that positive emotions are contagious too. Feelings of calm, feelings of connectedness, feelings of openness, that's all contagious too. So when we think about these fields together, right, we are intersecting in these layers all the time. Okay, maybe not so much over Zoom. Maybe it depends how far out you want to go and woo you want to get here. But I would say, not nearly the same as when we are in the same space together. So when we're in the same space and our electromagnetic fields are intersecting, that's just one more way that emotions are contagious. So if I walk into the space and I've done my baseline body scan, and I know that I'm in a pretty good spot, I'm not feeling a lot of tension, I'm not feeling a lot of anxiety, but I walk into a space and I start to really feel something in my gut, almost like a gut punch. Well, I'm probably picking up something in the room, and I can start to kind of scan around and figure out maybe where that's coming from a little bit. Maybe there's a person who's giving off some really kind of angry vibes. That doesn't mean that it's any of my business. That doesn't mean that I have to figure out what's going on, but it's good for me to know. It's good for me to have that awareness so that I can utilize that as important information of how to move forward, to be aware that there could be something going on. And so maybe I'm picking up anxiety, right? Or maybe it's my own, maybe I'm feeling anxious. Whatever it is, we can transform that kind of jaggediness into a more fluid, wave-like, calmer state. And that's going to impact everyone else around us. And we know that from some of the really cool research that's been done. It's not just the jaggedy state for our energy fields, it's our heart rate, it's our brain waves, it's our nervous system, our blood pressure, all these things match up with this kind of imaging. I want to talk about something before I kind of go into a little bit more of the how to do that. And that's this concept of congruence. Has anyone heard this term before, when we're congruent? Yes for a Y for yes and for no in the chat box. Okay, super. So most of you are familiar with this. So, when our insides are matching our outside, right? So we're able to take that mask off. We don't have the ability to really transform our emotional state, whether it's our own or the environment that we're in, if we first don't take the mask off. That doesn't mean oversharing and word vomiting everywhere. That doesn't mean, blurring those professional boundaries. But it does mean being authentic. It does mean being truthful with ourselves first, and maybe even with another person, hopefully with another person, if they're kind of checking in, because maybe that person's really highly sensitive and they're noticing, and it's really stressful to them that we're kind of trying to mask up and saying, everything's fine, everything's good, it's perfect, when it's really not. And so we're in a time right now with, the great resignation. And we're in a time right now with all the stuff with the pandemic and with the state of the world and all of these things. I really believe, and research is supporting this, that when we are not able, especially as business owners, especially as leaders, when we're not able to really show up honestly with the mask off, that's deeply contributing to an environment that doesn't help people feel safe, doesn't help people feel connected, doesn't help people want to work with us anymore. So it's, again, not about oversharing, but if someone I'm working with says, hey, are you okay? I can say, it's a rough day, but I'm working through it, and I can have boundaries beyond that of not necessarily sharing anything more if I don't want to. But just that ability to take the mask off and be real about it is so beneficial to the relationship. Now, as far as the nonverbal pieces, this also opens the door to the next piece that I want to share with you before we wrap up our time together. And that's the state of coherence. We get to be able to access a state of coherence when we are first congruent. So after we're able to take the mask off, we're not stuffing emotion anymore. When we stuff emotion, it actually takes effort and energy from our body. And so that prevents us from accessing here. But coherence is when all of our body systems are aligned. It's like our heart and our brain and our nervous system and, our mental, spiritual, emotional, physical, all the things, they're all rowing together. And so this is a state that's taught to pilots, that's taught to veterans, or people in the army, that's taught to people who are working in, really high level sports, because it's all about how to get in the zone. And this is going to help us access that solution-oriented place of our thinking brain. This is going to help us access that ability to really respond quickly and calmly at the same time. So I was saying that must be congruent, but here's the cool thing. So coherence is this optimal state in which the heart, mind, and emotions are aligned and in sync. Physiologically, the immune, hormonal, and nervous systems function in a state of energetic coordination. So I know that sounds really great. It's also like, oh, how do I be there? And we're going to talk about that here in a moment. But again, I want to remind us that this is about muscle strengthening. It's not that we should even be in this state of coherence all the time. It's not a mistake to not be. We don't want to do this breathing right before bed because it's actually going to wake us up a little bit. But it's one of those tools that we can bring out of our toolkit to support us and help us in whatever we're doing. So when we're in a state of incoherence, again, it matches that pattern. If you look at our heart rate over time, it's this jaggedy pattern. But when we're in a state of coherence, now we have this fluid wave-like pattern. And what this is, it's actually putting our nervous system into a state of energetic balance. It's a balanced state for our whole being. So when we're breathing in, it matches that rise up. And when we're breathing out, it matches that fall. And so this is our heart rate over time. And this is looking at how this actually helps us get into a state where our hearts, we have more heart rate variability, which is just a really good indicator for like health and responsiveness and this and that. But without getting into too much of the kind of geeky things about it, it's just really helpful in all the things. It's just really, really helpful. So when we're in the state of coherence, the state of energetic balance, nervous system balance, what's actually happening is we can think about it like a state of relaxed alertness. So we're relaxed, we're calm, and yet we're also very aware. And this is so nice for horses to be around because they feel like, oh, wow, you've got my back. I don't have to be the only one responsible to watch out for my safety, but you're also really nice and chill. So you're really enjoyable to be spending time with. So I'm going to show you this really quick video. It's going to show this person who's sitting in the center. You can't see her. She's behind this horse named Domino. But she's sitting in a chair with a heart monitor on. So we're able to know with that monitor exactly when she goes into the state of coherence, when she's in sync. All her rowers are rowing together. And you'll see that before she's given the signal and before she gets into that place, the horse is not bothered by her, but the horse doesn't really have a lot of interest in her. And as soon as she gets into that coherent state, you'll see what happens. Okay. So it's not really any sound for the video. If you're not hearing anything, you're not missing much. So the horse is just milling around. She's given the signal to go into that coherent state. She's practiced. She has some muscle strength in it. And right there is when she became coherent. We know from the time frame on the heart monitor, that's exactly when he put his head up. He's using his ears as like little radar detectors to be like, where's that lovely sensation coming from? Oh, it's coming from you. Oh, you're so nice to be with. So she didn't shake any treats. She didn't do anything big or obvious. She didn't change her body language at all. The only thing she shifted was getting into the state of coherence. And we're not that different from horses. The more I learn about horses, the more we're like we are. We really like this as humans too. So as leaders, as people in business, as people of the world, the more that we can access this kind of state, not only are we enjoyable for others to be around, but we're actually able to really effectively navigate through challenging moments, really effectively manage emotion and just deal with whatever's going on. So he just keeps hanging out with her. I won't show you the rest of this, but he just keeps staying, kind of gets distracted, but then comes right back down to her because she's helping him regulate emotion by being in this coherent state. So for us, this is all about kind of that grammar of connection, right? This is another tool. It's not just the grammar of communication, it's the grammar of connection. How are we creating healthy connection, healthy relationship? Even if it's strictly in a business sense, how are we creating that healthy communication and connection with others so that we can do our jobs with our full brains online, with our full selves. Deborah says it's amazing how we've been taught to put up walls to protect ourselves from others' emotional state, but it is better to open ourselves for everyone. Yes, it is. I'm going to stop sharing here. It is, and it's important to make sure that we're doing so in a way that is healthy for us too. So if we get overwhelmed by a lot of emotion, right, it's okay that we can't be open all the time. We can have our boundaries, we can have all these things in place, and strengthen these muscles. So the more that we can strengthen this muscle in a healthy way to be able to really have our heart open and be strong at the same time, that's how we can kind of think about this state of coherence, right? To be strong and aware, but also really kind and calm with an open heart. It's creating that balance within us. So I know we don't have a lot of time left, but I think we can just do a few of these breaths together to see what this is like. So with your eyes open or closed, I invite you to join me. And we're going to do even in and out breaths this time. The really long out breath was helpful to get us into that calmer state. So if you need to go back to that, please do. And as you continue to breathe, we're going to elongate, stretch our breathing time a little bit, make our breath a little longer, and breathing in for 4 or whatever number is right for you, and out for 4. Continuing that even in and out, shoulders soft and low, belly expands. And now I'm going to give you a really great trick. As you continue to breathe, recall a moment in your mind's eye where you had a tremendous amount of gratitude or appreciation. Maybe that's with a really great snuggle with a cat or a dog. Maybe that's in nature. Whatever it is for you, really bring that moment. It could be so small, but just really highlight that moment as you're doing these even in and out breaths. And let that beautiful moment that gives you so much beauty and gratitude, let that drop down into your body and fill your heart space. And as you continue to breathe in and out, allow your heart to almost draw that breathing in. And as you breathe out, allow the air to kind of flow through your heart, amplifying that sense of gratitude, amplifying that beautiful moment, almost like a heart massage with your breath. So still breathing deeply into your diaphragm, but almost like you're drawing that air flow through your heart space. And although we don't have the monitors to prove it to you today, there's a really good chance that you're pretty close to a state of coherence by integrating that. So whether it's on our call right now or very soon, but I invite you to write down on your paper also what sensations you notice in your body. And we have, I think, a couple minutes left, Lori. If anyone has any questions or thoughts you want to put it in the chat, I'd love to hear. But really take in this moment of what this feels like in your body. And you have access to this. You can pull this out of your toolkit. Even if you're in a stressful moment, you have a few really solid tools to lean on to hopefully help your brain come on more online and make it a little bit more enjoyable doing whatever you're doing.
And too, you could, if you want, you could unmute yourselves too at this point too, and you can ask a question too. Either one works.
I just want to say, Carmen, that this was incredible. I just on so many levels, really amazing. Thank you. Really, yeah.
I'm so glad, Barbara. Thank you. Thanks for being here.
It's interesting too, because one of the other things with horses, and I'm just going to say this really, really quickly, and it sort of moves away from what you talked about, but one of the great things about learning to ride for me when I was young was this extra sense that I developed, right? And I always rode on problem horses when I was growing up. Back then, we didn't even wear, helmets or protective gear. So you got to be really aware of what was around you because you wanted to know before the horse spooked, right? And the horse was good. So you got to know, like, if there's a plastic bag blowing down the road there, right? Or there's something going on over here. So just like, that's just a really amazing skill set that I developed that helps me to this day in the world of just being aware. Anyway. Wanted to share that, but just really wonderful session. One of the best I've been to for sure. Thank you.
I'm so glad. And I love what you shared there because I think it's so connected even to our business styles, right? How amazing is it if we can notice that business plastic bag, whatever threat or danger, and have that presence and awareness and calmness to navigate it. Yeah. I'm seeing some really beautiful comments here in the chat. Thank you so much. I really deeply appreciate all of your time. I recognize how time is a really big gift for us to enjoy together and a big sacrifice sometimes. So I deeply appreciate all of you being willing to sit through this with me today.
Well, thank you so much, Carmen. We really appreciate you coming in. I don't know, is there any last minute questions anybody has? And
there's one here that someone's asked, I'd love to share. It's Barbara asked, can you tell us about your workshop this weekend? Sure. So we're running a workshop here actually for business owners, for heart-centered business owners. It's a writing workshop. And I am collaborating with a person who, she used to be a journalist and now she's a copywriter. And it's really to create an environment where we can dive into some of those tools and make the most of this beautiful space. It's not directly with the horses, but it's on the land. And you can learn more about that through my website if you want. It's in person. It's in person. Yeah. Great. Would it be okay, Lori, if I put my website in the chat?
Oh yeah, please. Yeah, for sure. Put all your, any contact information there.
Perfect. Yeah, if anyone wants to check that out or any of the other workshops we have, you can see it through the website there. Thanks for asking. Perfect.
Well, thank you so much again for coming in and presenting for us. We really appreciate it and learned a lot from this. So thank you. And Carmen did, I'm pretty sure there was a few other suggestions of workshops that you could provide, right? And so we'll connect and book some for the fall and have Carmen back. So thank you again. And thanks everybody who attended today. We really appreciate you coming. And we look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. So have a great rest of the day and thank you very much. Bye.